The doctor told me, you have a really serious liver condition. I already knew the disease that I was suffering from. It's called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which had come as a result of colitis. That's an inflammatory bowel disease. So I'd been struggling with these diseases from 2011. And the doctor had told me, in the worst case scenario, you require a liver transplant, and sometimes you go as far as requiring intestines also to be transplanted.
The encounter happened last year, but Antony still remembers the worried look in the doctor's eyes.
The first thing when he saw me, I could just see it in his face. He was shocked because of the way I looked. He just told me, I don't need to know what you're suffering from, but what I can tell you, your liver is at its end stages and it's completely failed, and there's no other alternative. So you can tell me what you're planning to do, but my advice for you is get a transplant.
Further imaging showed actually that he had a problem narrowing of his biliary tree. You know, the tree that carries bile from the liver down to the intestines for digestion. There were multiple narrowings along the area. And now when this was tied up to what was happening before, abdominal pain, recurrent bouts of diarrhea, then in medical terms we say we are now dealing with a syndrome.
Antony was only 27, yet here was a doctor pronouncing what sounded like a death sentence because the urgently recommended liver transplant was not available in Kenya.
Listening to what the doctor told me and comparing the statistics and also the price implication, I settled for Apollo.
But the Indian option wasn't that cheap either. It required him to raise more than 7 million shillings. He would be joining about 10,000 patients who make the medical pilgrimage to India annually in search of quality and affordable treatment.
A child or an adult with liver failure is usually very sick. It's not just the liver, but there is a multi-system involvement. Sometimes the kidneys are affected, other organ systems are affected. Sometimes they have difficulty in thinking because there's clouding of the mind. They're severely malnourished, they have vitamin deficiencies, they have the risk of bleeding, they have fluid in the abdomen, so they're very sick. Now, doing a liver transplant is a complex operation because the liver itself has a very large amount of blood going through it, so it can bleed a lot. So to be able to do this requires a lot of finesse, requires a lot of experience, and these operations are very long, can take 12 hours, 14 hours. So when the child or the adult comes out, they need a lot of support in the ICU, and then the rehabilitation continues for about 2 weeks or so, and usually by 18-19 days they're out of the hospital, and then we keep them in Delhi for about 3 weeks, and then we send them back to their host country.
The complexity of liver transplants is further compounded by the fact that it is not just the patient you're dealing with, but the donor as well.
When the patients come here, they get their transplant and now it's time to go back home. Is the aftercare concerned?
That's a very important question because, you know, transplant requires care for an extended period of time, in fact, for the life of the patient. So we always tie up with colleagues in the host country, and then we make sure that they shared care. We share the reports, the discharge summary, the plan, and then the patient goes back to the home country, sees the doctor there, they send us the reports, and we work together as a team, and this collaboration is extremely important. And in today's world, when technology has brought us so close to each other, we can WhatsApp images, we can WhatsApp reports, we can email, we can Skype, we can FaceTime. Distance is no longer a barrier, and the whole idea, our endeavor really is for patients not to have to travel for anything that can be managed locally.
It is not just Kenyans who are lured by India's superior medical services. We met this couple from Philippines whose 13-month-old baby needed urgent liver transplantation sourced from their father's organ.
I lose weight, cut the sugars intake and everything, and no more alcohol intake. And I never really smoke, so there's no problem with that. So it really took so much sacrifice, but you know, every parent would do anything for his child. So, and during the time that he was diagnosed, the first thing actually that we did was to have a complete family picture, because we are really not thinking that we would be able to have the transplant, you know, as soon as possible. So because the doctor gave us told us that your baby needs to have the transplant as soon as possible before he reaches the age of 2 years old. And during that time, he was already 5 months old.
So about 15 months.
Yeah, about 15 to 18 months to decide. Right? No, 15 to 18 months wherein to raise the money needed for the transplant. And when we asked him, she told us raise about $100,000. That's why I told him that where in the world or what kind of profession would be earning, about $25,000 a month, unless you work for drugs or you're a politician,
So we met one of your patients.
Yes.
Can you describe for us what is this condition?
So we see a large number of children from many different parts of the world. In fact, we've done liver transplants in children from more than 25 countries. And typically these babies develop jaundice after birth. The jaundice gets worse. They develop liver failure, cirrhosis, and then eventually a need for a liver transplant. And that's really what brings them to India, so that we can give them a new liver and a new life.
Okay. What was the condition again? They mentioned the condition?
Yeah, this baby had biliary atresia. It's a condition in which there is no connection between the liver and the intestine.
There are no precise figures on the number of liver patients in Kenya, but doctors warn the number of patients suffering from the disease that is triggered by various factors could be on the rise.
The biggest challenge would be, for me, the time, our ability to detect and pick these conditions early. Because if we did, even liver cancer itself, you get it at an early stage, transplant the patient, you solve the problem.
There are hopes that Kenyatta National Hospital could soon have the right treatment infrastructure.
I will tell you the most important infrastructure for us is the theater, the equipment that is in that theater, and the intensive care units. Those three, those are very key. Because if you are dealing especially with the living donor, then it means you must have facilities to assess the donor. Assess the donor and make sure that the donation is safe. That this person is going to give a portion of their liver to the needy, the one who needs it, and that once he or she donates his portion of liver to this needy person, will live on to live normal life.
Antony has had to make adjustments dictated by his status. He is still on medication and cannot undertake heavy tasks. For Citizen Weekend, I am Anne Mawade.